game. 17 more battle with war. Cygnar versus everybody.
Hey guys, Steve here. Got another tournament report for you. This is a tournament I played on the weekend. It was a 4-game tournament, and I think it was 8 tables. I think 14 or 16 players. It was a very cool tournament, and let's get straight into my lists and see what I played. So they're both lists I played before. It's just my current pairing. So my first list is in heavy metal theme. It's Artist for General Nemo with Storm Chaser Finch. They've got a Squire, and then I've got the Hurricane, the new Colossal, out in the battle group with Dynamo, of course, which you pretty much have to take with Nemo, and also a Centurion, and then no units because it's heavy metal. So the Genuine Warcaster with the Firefly, as usual. Got Strangeways in there, and I've also got Jake's with the Stormclad attached. My second list looks like this. It's Stryker 2, Lord Commander Stryker with a Squire, and we've got Old Rowdy and Lancer fitting perfectly into the battle group points. Journeyman Warcaster with a Firefly, just like in the other list. And then because I've got 2 full units of Storm Lancers, I've also got Lattimore and a Stormblade Captain, and then a Stormblade Infantry, almost a full boat, just short one of the 3 weapon attachments, so just 2 weapon attachments there. Nice high model count list, that one. And it's Stryker 2 in Storm Division theme, and I'm actually still in 2 minds as to whether Storm Division Stryker 2 is better than Stryker 2 with the mercenaries helping him out. It's certainly a larger model count, but jury's still out as far as I'm concerned about whether it's actually a better list. So game 1 was completely random who I was up against, and I drew, purely by coincidence, I drew the troll player from my last battle report. Here's the list he played. Because he knew that I knew his other list a little bit, he decided to go for his second pair in the pair. So it's Gunbjorn this time, so there's no theme. And he's got a Dire Troll Bomber in his battle group, along with Dozer and Smig, and Roke, and a Troll Axa. He's also got Linissa Rasil, some Troll Whelps, the Creel Stone as usual. Everyone always takes the Creel Stone if they're trolls, with the Stone Scribe Elder, and this time he had the Trollkin War Wagon. And that's the first time I've seen that on the table. So here's what the table looked like. Let me just remind myself who got first turn. Judging by my deployment zone, I'd say I got second turn. So yeah, because I'm in heavy metal, I've got this 12-inch deployment zone, which puts me almost on top of my own zone. And also it looks like I decided which side of the table to start on. So because I've got Nemo, who's very sensitive to assassination, so naturally I went for the side with the wall and the trench on it. So I forgot to take a photo for the first turn, but here's the first round. So this is where we've both basically done our running up here. So I didn't really know what his game plan was, but I knew that this trench here was going to be very important for me because those troll bombers and Gunbjorn and the gun carriage, they've all got AoE's attacks to worry about. So getting my models up in this trench, and I could fit 3 heavies up in the trench, and also the Journeyman Warcaster, they could all fit in there. So that trench was pretty key for me to survive his shooting alpha. I've also got my Hurricane up, and directly behind the Hurricane is the Centurion. So the Centurion is he's kind of worth his weight in gold in this list. So what he's there for is basically to prevent the opponent from scoring. So he's always going to have Arcane Shield on him from the Journeyman, and he's always going to have his no charge spell Polarity Shield up. And then that's also the reason that Strangeways is in this list, because he can keep giving him that one focus. And that's important in this list because if Nemo gives one focus to a Warjack who's within range of Finch, then Finch automatically gives him a free focus. But most of the time, the Centurion is out of range of Finch. And so also the Centurion doesn't really need more than 2 focus most of the time, because he just wants to run and cast his no charge spell. An imprint. So having Strangeways there is really helpful, because he can give him that one extra focus that he needs to add to his power-up focus, and that just brings him up to what he needs. So that's a very functional little unit there, and very annoying for the opponent when it just heads towards their zone or objective or flag or whatever it happens to be for that scenario. So yeah, the Centurion part is there just to help me not lose on scenario. And then, as you can see down here on the bottom right, then Nemo's there with Jakes and the Squire all just lined up behind the wall there. It's quite nice having a wall for cover, because it means that Nemo, with his long-range gun, he could probably still take a couple of shots. You can still see what's going on the battlefield, and hopefully he's a little bit protected from assassination over there. Probably not brave enough to move him up into my zone unless it was on a go where I was desperate to score 2 points. Most of the time he's going to stay as far back as possible. In fact, I believe he was only just outside the kill box range there. So yeah, so that's my plan, is that I'm set up to absorb his shooting alpha, and hopefully I'll have the chance to do a fairly decent shooting alpha myself. So here's the next round. I think I've missed out the individual turns here, and you can see that he's moved up Gunbjorn actually into his zone there, because he needs to prevent me from being able to score on his zone. My Centurion again is hidden behind the Hurricane, but he's just towing into his zone there. It looks like Gunbjorn's actually put up a wall between himself and the Centurion as well. And yeah, because I can't remember what Gunbjorn's feat is, but for some reason I felt that it was still better just to sit inside the trench with the Dynamo and the Firefly rather than move them up into shooting range. So I think Dozer and Smig there are pretty dangerous with shooting, and I think the gun carriage was trying to take some pot shots as well. But I was brave enough to charge the Stormclad in there, so he's up there trying to take some chunks out of the AXA and Dozer and Smig. I don't think I managed to take down either of them. I can't remember what went wrong there, but at least he's engaging the Dozer and Smig and the AXA there, so they're going to have to kill that Stormclad on their next turn, and hopefully that's going to free me up to be able to shoot them with the Dynamo and the Hurricane and everything on the following turn. Over on the left hand side, all I need to do is try and keep the Centurion alive and in the zone. Might be necessary to repair him with Strange Ways coming up, but probably not. So the next slide. So here I believe I didn't actually get a chance to feat with Nemo, or maybe this was my feat turn. So what we've got here is the Hurricane got charged by Rock, and because I had Electrify up on the Hurricane, then obviously Rock wanted to get all of his attacks in. So he actually put the Bomber up behind Rock, so that when Rock charges in and gets pushed away when he hits me in melee, that he doesn't get pushed too far and he can still take all his hits. And I believe that he got the Hurricane down, along with some other stuff. He got the Hurricane down to maybe 3 boxes or something like that. But unfortunately that's just not enough in this situation, because Strange Ways is standing right next to the Hurricane, so he's going to be able to just walk up and repair all the key systems on the Hurricane, and it's really not going to cause me too many problems, and I'll get at least one more decent turn out of the Hurricane. Whether or not I'll be smashing up Rock or doing something else remains to be seen. Looks like the Journeyman... No, there's one... Oh yeah, Finch has died at this point as well, so that affects my focus efficiency somewhat, but I think it's not too much of a problem, because Nemo's really, at this point, he's only running the Hurricane and Dynamo. I think the Centurion is still there on the zone behind the Hurricane as well. So the next slide, you can see that I managed to pull off an assassination on Gunbjorn. So Gunbjorn was there on the zone. This lake is rough terrain, but it's not blocking line of sight, so I had the chance to I could get Dynamo in position to get a full volley of shots off on him. I was also able to get the Firefly up to take a couple of shots, I believe, and this was also my feat turn, so we were increasing the damage output on my electric guns. So again, with the Firefly, I certainly had enough focus left to give the Hurricane and Dynamo a full stack. Because the Hurricane can shoot while in melee. That was also very nice because I could boost that first shot to hit and then knock him down, and then I'd be free to boost the damage on all the rest of the hits. And actually, as it turned out, I think I took him out with 1 or 2 shots from the Hurricane, so I didn't actually need to activate Dynamo and bring him in. But as you can see, there's an empty base there that was marking Dynamo's eventual position. He needed to get close enough to do a 10-inch shot after the slam gun had knocked him down, but we worked it out, and it looked like even if I had slammed him the full 3 inches, I still would have been able to hit him with some Dynamo shots. But in the end, I didn't need to because managed to take down Gumbjorn. Afterwards, we spoke about the game, and we thought that actually his other list would probably be a better matchup in this particular case. But actually, my Nemo list and probably also my Stryker 2 list are actually pretty hard lists for him to come up against. I wasn't going to make the mistake that I made in my previous game about trying to assassinate Borka with ranged attacks. I wouldn't make that mistake again. And I think it would have been a bit of an uphill struggle for the trolls in this case anyway. So I was pretty pleased with that, the first game, and it's a win. Seeing as my performance in previous tournaments has been pretty dismal, and a lot of the guys at this tournament very competitive, and so my goal for this tournament was to walk away with at least 1 win, and that's pretty much my goal achieved in the first game. So although I felt like it wasn't a good idea to relax, as I've learned before, still play my best, but I felt like I'd at least come and done what I came here to do. So, moving into the second round, I drew Cyrus against Convergence of Cyrus, which is very interesting. I've never played against him before. This is a guy who actually plays Cygnar and has started Cyrus relatively recently. He's got a few months under his belt, though. And this means that he knows my list relatively well, not specifically Nemo 3 and not the Hurricane and Dynamo, but the rest of the models he knew roughly what they could achieve. And I'm up against this Cyrus list, and obviously didn't have any idea about any of it, but he was very nice enough to carefully explain everything to me, so at least had a pretty basic understanding of what his list was all about. And it's Father Lucant. He's got a corollary, which I believe is a standard focus management thing for Cyrus. He's also got an inverter in his battle group, which is like a very melee beat sticky sort of thing. And the prime axiom, which is the colossal, you can see in the middle there. Pretty scary looking, very nicely painted army, by the way. Looks very nice across the table. We've got 2 transfinite emergence projectors, or TEPs. So that's 4 colossal bases, including my Hurricane, all on the table. Huge bases. So pretty intimidating to look across that. And then in addition to that, he's got an algorithmic dispersion optifex and an optifex directive. I believe that's like kind of like the Choir of Menoth, that like gives a few special abilities to various to the Warjacks. And then because it's in the Destruction Initiative theme, he's got a ton of servitors. So a unit of reflex servitors, attunement servitors, elimination servitors, and another unit of elimination servitors. So the deployment is +2 for him. That's right. Everything has shield guard. So all the servitors and the jacks have got the shield guard, which is pretty powerful because he's got some... these transfinite emergence projectors are actually pretty sensitive to powerful shooting, which is what I've got a lot of. But then I shoot them, but then they just hand off that high power shot onto their chaff models here, and they just lose one of their servitors, some of which will just be regenerated for the next turn. I think the Prime Axion sort of poos out servitors every game. So yeah, very interesting list. And also Father Lucant has got an armor buff feat, in addition to having deceleration, I think it is. So he can get +6 armor skew for ranged attacks for 1 turn on his entire battle group, I believe, on everything, in fact. So that turned out to be quite important in this game. So here's after the first round, or the first round. I believe I got second turn once again. Maybe had first turn. So no, I believe I had second turn because I chose not to have the forests on, because I thought with all the huge bases that he would have problems with those forests, forgetting, of course, the huge bases have all got Pathfinder. So I've moved up Dynamo because his list has got a lot of shooting, can really soften you up before you get to him. So I've got Dynamo up on the hill there, looking to get a decent alpha strike on the on my feet turn, and I've got the Centurion. Couldn't quite make it onto the hill on the other side. He didn't quite have the movement to get up there. Stormclad just coming up behind the Centurion, making sure he doesn't get charged. The Centurion is charge proof, and then if something walks up to him, then at least the Stormclad can take care of whatever that would be. Got Nemo, Journeyman Warcaster, Jakes, Finch, and Strangeways are all hiding behind the wall on the middle of my side, pretty scared of shooting. And then I sort of hung back a little bit with the Hurricane and the Firefly. Pretty sure with all this armor I'm looking at that I'm going to need the Firefly to give some additional armor cracking. That plus 2 damage is pretty important. So so just been a little bit cautious with the Hurricane and the Firefly. So this is where I found out how horrendous the transfinite emergence projectors are. And now what their shtick is that they've got a spray attack. In fact, 2 spray attacks, 2 initial spray attacks on each of them. And it's pretty low power attack, and their rat is not great because I think Father Lucant has got rat of 5. So, but what they can do is they every turn they have 3 tokens, basically. They're servitors that don't really actually activate, but they have their position around the base of the model makes a difference. So on one side of the base they give an extra dice to hit, one side of the base they give an extra dice to damage, and around the back of the base they just give an extra attack. So you can choose various combinations for your sprays, and it's only a 10-inch spray, but what that means is you can skew massively for whatever you happen to be shooting against. So if you're shooting against large groups of infantry, then you can just get lots and lots of sprays. If you're shooting against death skew, then you can just get extra dice for attack. And if you're shooting against armor skew, or in this case a Centurion, then you can get some pretty nasty 5 dice or 6 dice anti-armor skew. And that's exactly what he did. In fact, even though I had Arcane Shield up on my Centurion, he still managed to take out half of his boxes with just a few, I think just 2 shots with his spray attack on the left there. So that was pretty scary and pretty impressive, and actually caused me to hesitate somewhat in my following turn. Also, he can, with these servitors flying around, he's able to close off some charge lanes, so it's not as easy as you might think to get across the table and against his dudes. So, and what with being exactly a 10-inch spray, obviously he only got as close as he had to, so he's 10 inches away from my Centurion on that side, which the Centurion can charge 4 plus 3, which is 7, plus 2 for reach, so he can charge 9 inches. So that TEP is safe outside of the Stormclad's charge range. Now, on the other side, he did the same. He tried to take down Dynamo with a spray attack, but luckily for me, it wasn't quite as successful. Again, he just got to that 10-inch range, just enough to shoot, and he was prepared with his shield guard stuff, so he had 2 servitors sitting there making sure that they were more than 2 inches away from the TEP. So if I tried to shoot the TEP with Dynamo, he could transfer it with shield guard onto one of his servitors, and then if I killed the servitor, that's fine. And then because Dynamo's special ability multi-fire only lets me allowed to shoot something within 2 inches of the last target, so that would mean that would be the end of my run of shots with Dynamo. So it's a pretty nasty plan to mitigate Dynamo's shooting, with a little fatal flaw, as we'll find out in a second. So and then my opponent then feated, so that's got everything much more protected, especially against shooting. So I made a bit of a mistake here. So the mistake I made was that I feated on this turn, I believe, and because of his armor skew, my feet kind of fell a bit flat. So obviously on the right, Dynamo couldn't carry on shooting the TEP, but what I found was, because I was just 10 inches away, because he was using his 10-inch spray, that's exactly the charge distance of Dynamo. So it's actually better for Dynamo to charge. He actually does, if you can't do electrical damage, then he actually does more damage if he charges in. So Dynamo's worth 18 points, the TEP's worth 19 points, and so I felt that was a fair trade, so I just ran Dynamo in, charged him in, and took down the TEP surprisingly easily. And at that point I didn't really get it, but after the game I kind of realised that if you want to deal with the TEP, you just need to charge it with a heavy jack. So on the left hand side, kind of failed to do that. What I should have been doing is just using the Centurion to free up the charge lanes for the Stormclad, but unfortunately I was a bit too timid with the Stormclad. So Stormclad along with Jake's, probably, if I'd set it up correctly, I probably could have got a charge off on this turn. I think the way that I had it, actually it was just a little bit outside of charge range. So instead of doing anything with the Stormclad, all I ended up doing was just shuffling him around so that he wouldn't get caught in the same spray that the Centurion got caught in. And that turned out to be a pretty big mistake. I should have been taking out other TEP on this turn somehow. So that was a pretty big mistake. Because of the armor buff, then I wasn't really doing any damage to any of his major pieces with the Hurricane. So I think I just took out a couple of servitors on the way for Dynamo, to make way for Dynamo to get in. So really, apart from that TEP, all I did was take out a couple of servitors, most of which would have just been regenerated on the following turn. So unfortunately that stalled the game somewhat. The clock started ticking down for both of us, and the game sort of petered out towards the end. And I ended up clocking myself, so at the moment neither of us have got particularly strong scenario opportunities here. I was able to just get pieces just to within contesting range of the scenarios, just to make my opponent spend enough time on his clock to work away and try and force him to have to remove pieces rather than just scoring easily and then winning the game that way. And then in the end I got down to less than 15 seconds on my clock, so at that point I couldn't possibly win, and he won on clock. Unfortunately that armor skew feat really threw Nemo out of kilter and prevented him from doing anything big. I think if we played this game again, then I would definitely be in a situation where I would get all my heavies and my Hurricane. I get the Centurion and the Stormclad on one side, Hurricane and Dynamo, and the Firefly on the other side. And then turn 2 or 3, I'd be looking to take down both of the TEPs, and then hopefully that would then leave me with too much on the board for him to recover, and then hopefully what I had left after his counter strike would be enough to take down either LeCant on his own or the Colossal and win on attrition that way. So I think because I was a little bit hesitant, I didn't quite understand the TEPs as well as I do now, and I think that's what cost me the game really. Also, again, clocking myself, so I obviously spend far too long thinking about what to do, and not enough time doing the stuff that should really be done on mental autopilot. Anyway, nevertheless, it was a really good fun game, and it was very nice to play against some Cyrus, and I'm looking forward to the rematch, which might happen in the near future. So, game number 3. Now, in this tournament, there was, I can't remember how many players, it was either 16 or 14 players, and 6 of them were Cygnar. So, at this point, I was not surprised to draw up in the mirror match here. My opponent had a Nemo 3 list and a Haley 2 list, and he knew he was up against Cygnar, and so he thought that Nemo 3 It's probably not the best draw because of the electric shooting, and I definitely didn't want to play Nemo 3 up against Cygnar, so we ended up with Haley 2 versus Stryker 2. So I was quite pleased because it was a chance for me to get Stryker 2 out, and at least then I wouldn't be locked into my final game as to what I could take. So yeah, across the board you can see my opponent's Haley 2 list. Now this is a list that I've also seen an identical list on Yala's website over on Courage of Caspia. So this is a popular way to run Haley at the moment. It's a heavy metal Haley. Obviously with the Stormwall and Thorn, Haley 2 I should say, obviously with the Stormwall and Thorn and the Squire, and then she's also got a Charger and a Hammersmith in her battle group. And there's yeah, it's interesting, the Hammersmith costs the same as the Ironclad, and it's very much a matter of taste as to which one you prefer. In this case, the Hammersmith actually does more damage, but is a bit slower. But he's also more survivable, so a lot of people think he's a superior option. He's also got Strange Ways, as you would expect when anyone's bringing a Cygnar Colossal, and he's got the Journeyman Warcaster, but with the Charger on it this time. So 2 Chargers in this list. And he's also got Jakes with a Stormclad. Jakes with a Stormclad, standard combination, very powerful, very useful. So yeah, so here's the setup. Now, I know Haley 2 a little bit. I played her in Mark 2 quite a few times, but I, for some reason, didn't get on with her very well. So I knew a lot of the pieces. In fact, I knew all of the pieces and what they do. Most of them I play myself, so the Stormwall I know quite well. Chargers are very simple. I don't actually own a Charger, but I know how they work. Strange Ways, Jakes with a Stormclad, yeah, all that stuff. And obviously just from list building and dojoing and things, then I know what the Hammersmith does. And Thorn is in there as well, and Thorn is super nasty, especially with Haley 2. So unfortunately, this game, I had to go immediately into this game from the last game, which was a very long and very tense game. So going into this game, I felt like my concentration was waning somewhat. As you can see, I had a chance to eat half a roll before we actually got started. And yeah, as I said, I don't think I was mentally at full firing on all cylinders. And afterwards, I'm already making excuses for losing this game, but afterwards we discussed it and we found that I probably, if he was going to drop Haley 2, then I probably didn't have much that I could do with either of my lists. His list probably outranges my Nemo 3 list, and Stryker 2, unfortunately, my alpha is completely blunted by his feat. So yeah, so I went into this game not really having much of a plan other than spread out a bit, and I didn't really know how I was going to do enough damage to take down, for example, a Hammersmith and a Stormwall. So my opponent, he set up over the other side, and what he was thinking at the time, which I didn't know at the time, was that because I've got such a high model count compared to him, I could probably surround him, and this was something I actually considered. I knew I was going to spread out quite heavily, but what I could have done was I could have run those Storm Lancers on either side right up the edge of the table, and then tried to loop around behind and give him an attack from 3 different angles. Another option would possibly have been to just set up Stryker just to score on the opposite flag to the one that he's got set up for Haley. So Haley's got that forest between her and the flag over on the right, and I've got pretty open access to the one on the left. So maybe I would be able to get Stryker up there and just camp that flag, and then hopefully just feed him enough of my models just to survive long enough to score on scenario and do it that way. Either way, it's not ideal. So let's have a look at what I did. So yeah, so here's the first turn. You can see he moved his stuff up. Got Thorn really far up already. Just getting ready to do some nasty Thorn Arcnode shenanigans. I really spread out with my Storm Lancers. I didn't want to get them charged by the Stormclad. And obviously with Haley 2, she's got Temporal Acceleration and Telekinesis. So she can get that Stormclad, I think it would do a 14-inch charge, something like that. So just had my Storm Lancers way out of charge range of the Stormclad. Really just trying to protect that flag more than anything. Got Stryker up in the middle with Rowdy sitting next to him. Should have known that would be a mistake. That was a big mistake. This is Haley. Look where Thorn is. So anyone who knows Haley 2 will know what's going to happen next. So what happened, he brought out Thorn. He did domination on Rowdy and hit Rowdy into Stryker's back arc, and got, I think he did something like 10 boxes just with one hit using Rowdy. So that was obviously very good play. Got those Storm Wall templates down to block any charges from my Storm Lancers. Over on the right, he's got a Charger, which already just took out one of my Storm Lancers on one side. So all in all, he just started whittling away my guys. And obviously, if I stay in that position, then I'm just going to lose guys every turn until he wins. So decided to be a little bit more aggressive, but I think it was probably already too little too late. Too indecisive, not committing enough. So charging the Storm Lancers through those templates, those Storm Wall templates, are actually pretty good. I think maybe I had Arcane Shield up on them at that point. Maybe I just had Arcane Shield on Stryker the whole time. Got much more defensive with Stryker, moved him a long way further back, got Rowdy a long way further back again. That could have been a bit of a mistake, because that kind of brought them out of the fight completely. Over on the right, I got Storm Lancers trying to engage and pick away at the Charger and not quite managing to kill it. So it's all going a bit badly generally. And as I said, not really having a proper plan that really scuppered me, especially against Haley 2. So I felt like I didn't have much chance just looking at the lists, and then I didn't have a plan. And and then the game was going badly anyway. So that's how it was really. So my opponent made an attempt to do an assassination run by bringing in Thorn, and then trying to get Stryker knocked down, or at least turned round, so that using telekinesis, and then shooting him down with the Stormclad. And he rolled absolutely abysmally, really, really terrible rolls. We both agreed that should have been it by the end of that round, and I think Stryker was still on 3 boxes, maybe 4 boxes at that point. But he rolled so badly, and there was misses and really crappy damage. So anyway, I had a chance to retaliate, and so Thorn was right out in front of me, which was great. I charged Rowdy in, and boosted to hit, because I was desperate to knock down Thorn and take him out of the game. At least if I was unlucky and didn't kill him, at least he would be knocked down and then couldn't be used as an arc node anymore. And of course I managed to miss with Rowdy on 3 dice, needing a 5 to hit, I believe. Maybe a bit more, because of set defense on Thorn, so I was probably needing 7s to hit. So anyway, I missed on 3 dice, which gave the dodgy Thorn a chance to just walk away and put him in a prime position for taking out Stryker on the following turn, and just moving on as quickly as possible. That's exactly what he did. Turned Stryker around again, and just walked up Thorn, and was able to just poke him to death pretty easily with Thorn. I think he may have also taken some shots with the Storm Wall, possibly as well. But as you can see, pretty unhappy about that game, and I actually apologised to my opponent for being so grumpy, because I really felt like there was nothing I could do for the whole game, and that's quite demoralising. But nonetheless, it's really up to me to try and ensure that my opponent has fun as well as the other way around. So trying to be a little bit more positive, even when it's clear that I don't have a chance, and then it's a bit more enjoyable for everyone then. So that's 2 losses to 1 win. So I still wasn't feeling bad, because I had my 1 win in the bag. So moving on to the final game, I was praying that I wouldn't draw a Cygnar, because I was a bit worried that I'd have another bad matchup. And who did I draw into but Cygnar? That's right. This time my opponent went for a Haley 3 list. And Stryker 2 is my Cygnar drop in this pair. So I just went for Stryker 2 again. So the Haley 3 list was Haley 3 with a Squire and a Stormclad, Thorn, and Ironclad in her battle group. And then it's not in theme, so he's got some mercenaries. So we got the Piper, we got Ragman, Journeyman Warcaster with a Charger, which is quite a popular combination apparently. And then this time he's got unit of Storm Guard infantry. That's the first time I've seen them on the board. I didn't even know what their card looked like, so I had to read up on them again. And when I read the card, I kind of realised why no one really takes them. They're kind of like a crappier version of Storm Blades. And then finally, rounding it off with a bunch of trencher infantry, which is actually pretty standard for Haley because of the old cloud wall, and then giving them tactical supremacy so they can walk out of the cloud, so you can protect your whole army with a wall of clouds. So here's what the table looked like. So this was completely the opposite of the last game in that I had a pretty solid plan. So the way things work in Storm Division is you take 2 units of Storm Lancers, you take a unit of Storm Blades, and then you can make a brick of Storm dudes. Because of the Storm Blade Captain, they can all walk and charge over each other, shoot over each other, and they've got line of sight through each other. You've got Lattimore in there as well. So you can make a pretty solid brick, and your opponent gets one chance to break it up before you can charge. So that was my plan. And the way that the table's laid out, the way that he set up his dudes, I believe he got first go. I can't remember quite. No, maybe I got first go this time. He's a long way away from his right-hand zone, so I was very aware that I could maybe pop in there. Got some cover from that forest. I could pop in there with Stryker and maybe score a couple of cheeky points. And so my plan was to move my guys up through the gap between those 2 forests. So that's what I did. So here you go. This is after my first turn. I've got my wall. 1 unit of the Storm Lancers are just set up all in base contact with each other. I believe they've got Arcane Shield up, so that puts them up armor 20. Then you've got the Storm Blades up behind them, so if they get their pre-movement before the game and then they can run, that gives them enough movement to get up behind the Storm Lancers without too much of a problem. And then the second unit of Storm Lancers I kind of squeezed in behind as much as I could. Now, one mistake I've made before with Stryker is that he really wants someone out there with positive charge on to help those Storm Lancers with a bit of armor cracking. So this time I made sure that my Lancer was over and available to receive positive charge, because he can put it on himself because he's an arc node, to receive positive charge and then run round and into the zone and help with any armor cracking if necessary. Then I've got the Firefly. Don't think the Firefly is that necessary because I'm looking at a lot of infantry. So my shooting is going to do a lot of damage either way, so not too worried about getting the Firefly out there. Might even be able to do some shooting on his own. And then we've got Stryker on the hill, just giving him a little bit of extra protection. And then he's cast Deceleration, which also is great because it gives those front line of Storm Lancers armor 22 against shooting, which is pretty excellent. Protects them from most anti-infantry shooting. My opponent responded, and I think this is a little bit of a mistake because he had the chance to block me with a smoke wall. My response to that would have been probably to walk the first row of Storm Lancers into the smoke and then shoot them in the back with electricity shooting, and then the Electroleaps would have helped me kill a lot of trenches. But instead of that, my opponent decided to do some combined ranged attacks with his trenches, and but unfortunately he didn't roll very well. Also, the ranges weren't working quite so well as he'd hoped, so a couple of my Lancers were out of range from some of his dudes, so he managed to take down one of my Storm Lancers, which probably wasn't anywhere near enough to slow me down. So you can see I'm pretty primed for a pretty nasty alpha. My Storm Lancers are going to be able to reach across that wall. They'll get a little defense bonus, but it doesn't really matter because I'll be rolling 3 dice on my attack. So here's the state of the board after I managed to get my alpha off. So yeah, it was pretty brutal. All in all, I managed to completely wipe out that whole unit of trenches. Even with reposition and all that kind of stuff, I've got kind of a quite spread out group of Storm Nouns here. I believe I did my mini feat on my Storm Blades this turn to stop them getting killed. So although I'm looking across a lot of stuff, it's actually going to be a bit of a challenge for him to clear out enough of my dudes to even be able to stop me getting another alpha strike with my final row of Storm Blades and Storm Lancers. On top of that, I've gone over and scored 2 points over on the right-hand zone, so he didn't get anything in the zone on his turn. So I was able to just walk Stryker and get those 2 points. I've even got Rowdy in a position where he can't be attacked by the Ironclad. He can't be charged because the Ironclad doesn't have Pathfinder and doesn't have Reach. But Rowdy, doesn't matter what goes into the zone, Rowdy would then be able to countercharge everything that comes out. So yeah, I feel like I'm in an extremely dominant position here. I feel like my plan worked flawlessly. I was feeling excellent at this point and in a very self-congratulatory mood. My opponent was being a very good sport. It was the last game of the day, so everyone's pretty exhausted at this point. And we weren't in the running for winning, so we didn't really mind what happened, I don't think, on this round. So, yeah. So, let's have a look at the next turn. So my opponent did a pretty good job of returning fire. So he's got his Haley Past and Haley Future up at this point, and Haley Past is absolute demon. She can do so much work. There's having essentially three warcasters in the battle group is really good. Very flexible warcaster, loads and loads of tricks. So he did really well. He got definitely killed off that front line of Storm Lancers, which is actually a pretty favourable trade in his from his point of view. So he lost his trenches, but gained a whole unit of Storm Lancers. He took out most of the Stormblades. I think there's 3 left, and the Stormblade Captain is still left. And the other entire unit of Storm Lancers is still alive. Because I didn't feel like I needed the Lancer, I moved him on the way back because I felt like I would need help on the other side, because all I need to do, having got 3 points on the last turn, all I needed to do was score another 2 points on my next turn, and then I would have win automatically. So he just got enough guy. He got his charger over into the right hand zone, just out of the counter charge area of Rowdy, so just prevented me from scoring on that zone, but that's fine. And then got his Stormclad into the left-hand zone, which would be probably quite possible to remove, but maybe a little bit tricky. So then that was my feet turn, was next turn. I think I've been a bit premature in saying that I was scoring. I think this was the round that I scored in. Actually, I must have got the first turn. So yeah, this is the round that I scored 3 points in. So I did manage to clear out his Stormclad and a few Stormguard on his side of on the other side of the table there. Got Stryker and Rowdy up in the zone. I was a little bit timid with Rowdy. Actually, he's probably better. So I charged all the way across to the to kill the charger without too much of a problem with Rowdy. And then with the feet turn, I ended up putting Rowdy, just making sure he was out of charge range of anything else, so that Thorn couldn't possibly charge over and get him or anything like that. And then I made sure that Stryker was right up behind the forest, but still well within the zone. The Squire is there up next to him because he's quite useful to have near him. And yeah, the other side, the zone is full of my models. So I'm feeling pretty good at this point. I don't really see that there's any way that my opponent can win. He could probably get some models into my zone, but he's unlikely to be able to completely clear my models out of it. So he could prevent me from scoring on his turn, but then my retaliation, I'd probably be able to clear out whatever he put in there because he's lost his Stormclad at this point. I think he's still got his Ironclad. Yeah, his Ironclad is down there. His Ironclad's causing problems for a couple of my Storm Lancers. But yeah, over on the right here, I've got Stryker set up to score, and he's not really got any chance to do anything about that. Anything he puts in the zone, if I don't counter-charge it, then I'm probably going to be able to charge it and destroy it, and then just score my 2 points. I've got Strikers up on a camp of 3 focus as well, and he's hidden behind a forest. So yeah, at this point, I feel like I'm sitting pretty. I don't really feel like there's anything my opponent can do. So obviously that was the point at which Stryker got assassinated. So this is where I learned that the assassination angles for Haley 3 are ludicrous. and my opponent, he carried out probably the best assassination I've seen on any bat rep that I've seen. It was incredible. So if you look at the board state right now, so it appears that he can't possibly win, but he managed it, and here's how he did it. So what he had to do was, his plan was, he wanted to get Thorn around to between where Rowdy is and Stryker is. Over on Stryker's side, he wanted to run Thorn around into Stryker's back arc. Then he wanted to use Thorn as an arc node to force hammer slam Stryker through the forest, just far enough that he would then be able to attack Stryker and knocked down Stryker from the other side of the forest, from his side. So there's a little bit of a problem there, so obviously he had to be a bit careful about Rowdy's counter charge, but Rowdy wasn't far enough over to worry too much. He could still fit Thorn just around the edge of that forest, but the big problem was getting a free strike from Stryker. He needed to get into the back arc to ensure that he could hit him with the spells, so he really needed Stryker to be knocked down. Now what he's got here is he's got an ironclad very close, that is actually within walking distance of walking up to the Squire, having no problem hitting the Squire, knocking the Squire down with his special attack, which is an AoE of knockdown, and then just catching Stryker just within that AoE and knocking him down. But the problem with that is if he walks his ironclad over to where the Squire is, he just earned himself a free strike from the Lancer on the ironclad's right. So he brought in, so here's the board after the assassination run. So what he did is he brought in the Storm Guard. He had enough Storm Guard to take out that Storm Lance. That freed up the Ironclad. The Ironclad walked over, hit the Squire with his special attack, which knocked down Stryker, who was standing next to the Squire. He then ran Thorn round behind the knocked down Stryker, lined it up exactly so that he would slam and wouldn't hit the Ironclad. Then he moved the Haleys, all three of them, up into a position where if Stryker was in the forest, that they would all be able to attack him with all their various attacks. Then he started by doing a force hammer through Thorn, got a 5 on the slam. Because it was through forest, it was 2.5 inches. That was just enough to get into baby Haley's melee range. And then he just unleashed hell with all of those attacks, all of that focus that he had, and finally he was able to assassinate Stryker despite his camp of 3 focus. Despite having Arcane Shield up on him, he was able to take him down, and with attacks to spare, he didn't even come down to the last attack. So that was a spectacular finish to the game. It was so much fun. I didn't care that I lost because it was such an amazing assassination. Just the fact that he even spotted that he could do it, let alone that he pulled it off. It wasn't 100% certain that he'd be able to do all of the different elements. Even if he had not been able to kill the Stormlance with the Storm Guard, that might have been enough to prevent him from being able to pull off the assassination. But frankly, if he didn't pull off the assassination, then I would have been winning. So yeah, kudos for him for spotting it and pulling it off, and that was a really excellent end to a pretty good, fun tournament. So I went 1 for 3, which is, as I said at the beginning, which is what I was aiming for. So I'm pretty happy with that. And yeah, I've been going on for a long time, so I'm going to stop talking now. But yeah, suffice to say that it's going to probably be a few games before I have a game like that again. Alright, well thanks a lot guys. Playing another game this week, so hopefully the next back rep will be up before long. Alright, cheers.